Namaste everyone, welcome to Advaita Vedanta Satsang House. With Bindoji already settled in Australia, so we are starting on chapter 5, and so you'll see a change in schedule. So the classes will be on Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 6:30 a.m. IST. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 a.m. IST. That will be the schedule. The class will last for an hour, after which we'll have about half an hour time with Bindoji if you have any questions or clarifications. I'll close the chat and hand raising when Bindoji is conducting the class so that, we can fully focus on the class, after which those channels will be open. In the chat window, I've pasted a few links. One is a link to the Advaita Retold YouTube channel where you can access the previous classes and also other lectures that Bindoji has offered on Clubhouse. They are also well cataloged in the Apple Podcasts and Spotify links provided. If you are interested in reading about Advaita, there is a book published by Artemisia based on Bindoji's insight, which can be an excellent companion for you to go deeper into the Advaita approach. And with that, thanks everyone for coming, and thank you very much, Bindoji. Over to you.
Thank you, Prakash. Namaste and Hari Om to all of you. As usual, my invocation. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Vamsharshibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutravamshikritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibeda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The Gita Dhyana Shlokam. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyai Stavai Vedai Sangapadakramo Parishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyandi Yam Yogino Yasyandam na vidusura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha. We concluded the 4th chapter in detail, and we found that the discussion was Krishna explaining the teaching which he had given from the beginning of creation to the Vivaswan, the first creation. And whenever dharma was in the decline and adharma was getting stronger, he had appeared, or he had incarnated at various times for the purpose of re-establishing dharma in this world, which shows that even this incarnation as Krishna is for the purpose of re-establishing the superiority of dharma and removal of adharma from the social fabric, for which he has given the methodology of understanding what is karma, what is vikarma, what is akarma, and then how the non-doership, akarma, is most important of them all. And when we are in a position to fully engage ourselves in our dharmic life, what is righteous, what is supposed to be done by us, whatever may be the birth, the responsibility and the social order in which you have born, it is immaterial. It is it is applicable to from the smallest of the creation to the highest of the creation, from the least powerful to the most powerful. It is equally applicable. We have to do our duties, but for which we are born. At the same time, when we are performing these duties, the effect of the duties should not be binding us or the, rebirth and the karma phala or the reaction of the fruits of action. So he mentioned the two most important enemies in the path who are always ready there to hijack us from our path. Raga ega, dvesha ega. Raga dvesha. This is the desire and the aversion, or the attraction and the aversion towards the activities. No activity should be attracting us to do the actions. At the same time, there should not be any action which is aversion, which is creating an aversion in us for performing. Seeing the action as action itself, not as my action or I need the fruit of this action. That is the nature in which we can be the non-doer of the action, which was explained, and then he concluded toward the chapter by listing out the various type of yajnas depending upon what is the capability or the inclination we all have towards our life. So from the dravya yajna, from the material oblation which is being done, to the jnana yajna, the superior most one of them is the jnana yajna. And the yajna should be seen in the light of the verse number 24. That is the most important aspect in this particular chapter. Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi, Brahmagno Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gandavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhinaha. We should see that everything from the least of the creation to the highest of the creation, everything is performing an order in which the nature is expecting and every one of them to work. This very action of the nature itself should be seen as an action of Brahman. An action of Brahman in the sense that whatever is being offered, whatever is being oblated into, whatever is the fire in which it is getting oblated, on all those Brahma Karma Samadhina. It has to be a treatise or a methodology that an activity in Brahman is taking place. There is no my activity when you have this attitude in the actions. That is why the Brahma Karma Samadhi, which is in the fourth chapter, 24th verse, is the attitude with which we should be able to perform our actions. And toward that, he also mentioned the jnana. This can be achieved only when we have the knowledge for the reality. That when we are seen as separate individuals, we will have the attraction and repulsion, or desire and hatred, all these type of mental images in our functions. But when we see ourselves as part of the yajna process, and that we are non-separate from them, even our actions will become a Brahma Karma Samadhi. Having said this, the 5th chapter opens with a confusion in the mind of Arjuna. Arjuna Uvacha, Sannyasam Karmanam Krishna, Punar Yogam Cha Shamsasi, Yatshreya Etayor Ekam, Tanme Bruhi Sunishchitam. Arjuna's question is not out of place. He said, Krishna, you praise one side the renunciation of action, sannyasam karmanam. And again, punaha, yogam cha shamsasi, karma yoga, that is also being praised by you. One side renunciation, other saying that the action is superior. We are saying that is yoga of karma is superior. Tell me for certain that one, which of them, of these two, is better? Tayor ekam. Tayor ekam means between them, tell me for certainly which one is superior. Tanme bruhi. Tat me bruhi means to me you explain that. Yat shreyaha. Which is the superior most or which is better than the two. Sunishchitam. With the certainty. Ascertaining which is this. So, Shankaracharya is starting with a long commentary as an introduction. I have to read that, no other choice, because that gives the foundation for the 5th chapter to be understood perfectly. It starts like this. Karmani akarmaya pasyet ityarabhya sayuktaha krishna karma krit jnanagni dagda karmanam chariram kemala karma kurvan yadrchhalava santushtaha brahmarpanam brahma havihi karmajan vidditan sarvan sarvam karmakhilam partha jnanagni sarva karmani yoga sanyasta karmanam ityedai vachanaihi sarva karma sannyasam avochat Bhagavan. So Bhagavan, Krishna, karmani akarmaya pasyadityarabhya yoga samnyasta karmana ityedai vachanaihi sarva karma sannyasam avochat. Krishna narrated karmani akarmaya pasyed, one who sees akarma in the karma. That means non-doership while action. Sayuktaha karma krishnakris. When he is established, Krishna karma krit, he completes his actions. Jnanagni dagda karmanam. The knowledge, the fire of knowledge, all actions are burnt in it. Chariram kevalam karma kurvan. The body is in action, not you. That is the 21st verse which he mentioned that. And yadircha lava sandushta. What should be the attitude of such a person? He is not desiring anything. If something comes on the way, he is satisfied with that. Yadircha lava santushta. Then the verse 24th verse, which is the Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi, explained in detail. Karmajan viddi tan sarvan. All these things are born out of karma. Therefore, sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. All these karmas are enabling one to move towards the knowledge, which is the ultimate. And jnanagni sarva karmani basmasat kurute. With the knowledge that has matured in the individual by this process, all actions and the reactions of it or the fruits of actions are burnt, basmasat kurute, as burned into ashes. That means there is no residue seen of any tinkling or any image of the karma in such a person who performs actions with the knowledge as it. Yogastak sanyastak karmana. So the renunciation of karma should be through yoga of the knowledge. So the renunciation of all actions by these statements beginning with he who sees action in inaction in action. Bhagavan also said that whose actions are renounced through yoga. Then he said, Chitva enam samsayam yogamatishta ityanena vachanena yogam cha karmanushtana lakshanam anutishta ityuktavan. Chitva enam samsayam yogamatishta ityanena. In that chitva means having torn or destroyed samsayam, the doubt which arises in the mind. Only then you can atishta yoga, you can be established in the yoga. Karma anushtana lakshanam yogam. That is the way in which the yoga has to be performed. Practicing yoga characterized by this performance of action. Tayor ubayor dvayohascha karmanushtana karma sanyasayoho sthiti gati vat paraspara virodhat ekena saha karmam shakyatvad. Because of these two, performance of action and renunciation of action, they are mutually opposed. How are they opposed? Sthitigaditvad, like the stillness and motion. Both are not the same. And therefore, ekena saha kartum avasyaktvad. Because they cannot be ashakyatvad. They cannot be practiced simultaneously. That is, you cannot stand still and be in motion. Same way, you cannot do karma sannyasa and karma yoga. Kala bedena cha anusthana vidanasya abhavat. Now, if you take the time factor also at different times, there is no injunction prescribing their practice at different times in the Vedas. So, not only one, they are mutually incompatible simultaneously, but there is also no explicit prescription in the Vedas that they are to be successively practiced after one another. Arthat etayoho anyatara kartavya praptau satyam. Therefore, since the necessity has arisen that one or the other of the two must be undertaken, so a choice has become necessary. Yat prasasthataram etayoho karmanushtana karma sanyasayoho tat kartavyam na itarat ityevam manyamanaha. Thinking thus, of these two, whichever is superior should be done, not the other, is the expression in Arjuna's internal reasoning and asking the first verse of this chapter. Prasastyatara bubudhya arjunaha uvacha sannyasam karmanam krishna ityadinaha. So desiring to know so of the superiority of the two, Arjuna said, which of the two? Nishtidam bruhi. So, of these two, performance of action and renunciation action are mutually opposed. There cannot be practiced together. And there is no prescription as mentioned that at different times they can be practiced one after the other or one before the other. Therefore, the necessity has arisen that one of the have to be undertaken by those who are listening to this verse advice from Krishna. Therefore, Arjuna is asking whichever of these two, performance of action or renunciation, is superior, and tell me that, O Krishna. Nanu cha atmavidaha jnana yogena tishtam pratipadaishen purvodahritai vachanaihi bhagavan sarvakarma sannyasam avochat natu anatmatnyasya. Krishna has said, sarvakarma sannyasam, renunciation of all actions. Atmavidaha nityam nishtam pratipadayishyan, intending to establish the steadfastness in knowledge for the knower of the self, to whom natu anatmatnyasya, not for the ignorant of the non-self, the self, one who has no idea about the self. Ataha cha karmanushtana karma sanyasayoho binna purusha vishayatvad anyatarasyam prasastyatara tva bubuchya ayam prashna anupapannaha. Therefore, this question is not inappropriate. Therefore, this question is not appropriate. Why? Because the two, karma and sannyasa, pertain to two different persons. Adhikari Beda is there. Thus, no need to ask which is better if they apply to different adhikaris. That is the way in which the Purva Pakshi or the opposition is asking this question. Nanu. Satyameva. Tvad abhiprayena prasnohna upavadyate. Prashtu swabhiprayena punah prasnaha yujyate eveti badama. True, from your standpoint, this question does not arise. That is from the person of a karma anushtana, one who is steadfast in the karma. But from the questioner's point of view, that is Arjuna's standpoint, the question is valid. Katham, the opponent is asking how. Purvodahritai vachanaihi bhagavata karma sannyasa kartavya vivikshadatvad. Because the renunciation of action was intended as something to be done. Pradanyam antarena cha kartaram cha tasya kartavyatva asambhavat anatma vidabi kartaha pakshe praptaha anubhudyate eva. Because without specifying a principal agent, objection cannot stand. Thus, if something is to be done, there must be a doer. Even the ignorant person comes into consideration as a possible doer and is indeed implied in this, included in this. Not. Punaha atmavit kartrutva akartrutvam eva sannyasasya vivikshitam. It is not intended that renunciation is exclusively for the knower of the self. Ityevam manvanasya arjunasya karmanushtana sanyasayoho avidvat purusha kartrutvam api asti iti. Thus thinking, Arjuna considers that both karma and sannyasa can belong even to the ignorant. Purvoktena prakarena tayoho paraspara virodat anyatarasya kartavyatve prapte. Since, as said earlier, Purvabhuktam, they are mutually opposed, and since one of them must be done, prasastataram kacha kartavyam na idaram iti prasastatara vidisha prasnaha na anuvapanna. The superior one alone should be done, not the other. The question is asked to know the superiority of it. Therefore, the question is not inappropriate. So if you want to look at the summary of the thing, one may object Krishna intending to establish steadfastness in the knowledge of the knower of the self. He explained the renunciation of all action through the previously cited statements that listing from karmani akarmaya pashyati, not the knower. Therefore, since the performance of action and the renunciation of action pertain to a different person, the question, which of these is superior, is appropriate. This is true from the standpoint, the question would not arise, but from the questioner's own standpoint, the question is indeed valid. That is why it is not for the ajna, because those who earlier statements of renunciation of action was presented as something to be done. So all the action regarding action has to be done is what it was intended in the statements of the Krishna. And since an obligation cannot exist without a doership, even the non-knower comes into consideration as a possible doer and is implicitly included. It is not that renunciation is intended exclusively as performed by the knower of the self. This is the thinking which Arjuna had in his mind. Therefore, Arjuna considers that both performance of action and renunciation of action may belong to the same person, whether he is ignorant or knower. And since, as stated earlier, the two are mutually opposed, and one of them must be chosen. Therefore, the superior alone should be done and not the other. Therefore, the question asked with the desire to know which is superior is not inappropriate. Prativachana vakyartha nirupanena api prashtum abhipraya evam iti eveti gamyate. Katam sannyasa karma yogai nisrayaskare tayoho tu karma yogo vishishyate iti prativachanam. Etat nirupyam kim anena atmavit karmayoho sannyasa karmayoho nisrayaskaram tvam prayojanam uktva tayoreva kutaschit visheshat karma sannyasat karma yogasya visheshyatam uchyate. Aho, Srit. Anatmavit karmayoho sannyasa karmanayoho tadupayam uchyate iti kinchata yadi atmavit karmayoho sarma sannyasa karmayoho nisrayaskaratvam tayoho tu karma sannyasat karma yogasya vishishyate uchyate. So, it is that to be understood, gamyate. What? From what? Prativachana vakyartha nirupanena api. Even from the analysis of the reply of the statement. What is to be understood? Prashtu abhiprayaha evam eva. That the questioner's intention is exactly as stated. The reply to this is sannyasa karma yogayo nisrayaskaro tayoho tu karma yoga vishishyate. Renunciation and karma yoga both lead to liberation, but of the two, karma yoga is superior. Therefore, the doubt is now within. The two possibilities are raised. Atmavit karma yoho, it is stated that with reference to the action performed by the knower of the self, or is it said that with reference to those who performed by the ignorant? That is the doubt. Restating alternatives by statement that Atmavit and Atmavit, both, the statements applied, what to whom, what is to be applied is what is now going to be discussed. So the refutation of the first part, that Atmavit Karmayoho Asambhavatvad, the question, the doubt which was in the mind was that karma and sannyasa belong to the same person, is the doubt, with the understanding with which the question was framed. That is what is being now, I think, mentioned, that it cannot belong to the knower of the self. Therefore, Nirsheshaskaratva Vachanam, that is both lead to liberation, Vishishtatva Abhividhanat, Karma Yoga is superior, both become Anuvapanna, because both of them are untenable in the case of a knower of the Brahman. The second opinion, if Anatmavidaha karma sannyasaha karma yogaha karma anushtana lakshanaha, that is, if both are possible, then both being liberating and karma yoga being superior, both become reasonable. So that is also being rejected. For the knower, sannyasa karma yogayoho asambhavat, both cannot apply. Therefore, both lead to liberation, karma yoga is superior, both are anupapannam, both are not applicable simultaneously. That is, renunciation and karma yoga both lead to liberation, but of the two, karma yoga is superior, is the doubt which we had, is now being examined. Is this the statement made with the reference to renunciation and karma yoga to be performed by the knower of the self, stating both leading to liberation due to the same distinction, declaring karma yoga superior to renunciation? That is the doubt. Or is it said that with reference to the performed by the knower? Now, confusion is too much. Both are leading to liberation. Krishna has said, karma yoga, karma also will lead to chitta shuddhi and the knowledge. Then karma yoga is also liberating in nature. So it's natural that, the confusion can arise in all of us. Which one is the better, superior, or who should do what? If it is the reference to the knower of the self, then both statements that they lead to liberation and karma yoga is superior would follow. Or if the reference is to the ignorant, then both would follow there also. Here the reply given by the Siddhanti, or Shankaracharya is giving the reply that in the case of the knower of the self, since both renunciation and karma yoga cannot coexist, both statement that may lead to liberation and karma yoga is superior to renunciation are untenable. Shankaracharya is very clear that sannyasa and karma, whether it is karma or karma yoga, cannot go together, cannot coexist. We have studied that parvatavat akampyeha. They are like two mountains which cannot be moved and merged together. Now, if it is for the ignorant person, then what? Both renunciation of action and karma yoga, defined as performance of action, which is opposed to, are possible. Then both the statement that they lead to liberation and karma yoga is superior to renunciation become reasonable. That statement was for the person who is ignorant. Because for him, the renunciation doesn't come with the non-doership. It is the renunciation of action itself. That is what is becoming the karma yoga, where he performs that as an offering to the higher pedestal. Therefore, the renunciation of a jnani and the renunciation of an ajnani are different from the antakarana aspect. However, in the case of the knower of the self, since both are impossible, that is, once you become a knower, both become impossible for you. You are neither the doer nor you are the renunciator, because there is, even for renunciation, there should be a author or a doer. That is not the thing. Therefore, the question of liberation and karma yoga, which is superior, is not tenable in the case of a jnani. So the question is only in the case of a ajnani. Atra aha kim atmavidaha, that is, अत्र किम आत्मविदः संन्यास कर्मयोः उभयोः अपि असंभवः अहो सित् अन्यतरस्याम् असंभवः यतः च अन्यतरस्य तदा किम कर्म संन्यास उतः कर्मयोगः असंभवो कारणं च वक्तव्यम् इति. So if the doubt is raised, is that for the knower of the self both renunciation karma yoga is impossible, or is it only one of the two is impossible? If one is impossible, which one? Whether it is karma yoga or karma sannyasa or karma yoga. And the reason for that impossibility must also be explained. So the objection asks for precision. Now the reply begins. Atmavidaha karma yogasya asambhava syad. For the knower of the self, karma yoga is impossible. Sorry. For the knower of the self, one who has the jnana, for him, karma yoga is impossible. Because there is karma, for the karma yoga, there is a doership. Because nivritta mityatnanatvat, the false ignorance that I am the doer has ceased in the knower of the self. Viparyaya jnana moolasya, that which is rooted in the ignorance of I am the doer. So Shankara's immediate answer is that both are impossible. Karma yoga is impossible for the knower, and karma sannyasa is also. Then the opponent is asking, who is Atmavid then in that case? Yaha nishkriyam atmanam atmatvena vedi. Listen carefully. One who knows actionless self as his very self. Understanding the self in the right way is very important. One who knows the actionless self, the non-doer self, as his very self. And how is the self described for such a person? Janmadi sarva vikriya rahita tvena. Is free from all modifications such as birth, death, etc., doership, enjoyership, all of them. Janmadi sarva vikriya rahitam. There is no modification for the self, or the self is always beyond all modifications. Nirskriyaatmat swarupatva swarupa avasthana lakshanam sarva karma sannyasam. Na sarva karma sannyasam, that is renunciation of all actions, characterized by abiding in the nature of actionless self. There is the abidance in a self which is devoid of the doership. That belongs to the knower. The knower knows that I am that vikriyatma, vikara rehita, akarmavit, non-doer, self. And all the karma yoga, karma anushtana is all off due to ignorance. Then the opponent is asking a question. What is the karma yoga then? It is described as or the opposite. Tad viparyayasya, of the opposite kind. Namely, mityajnana mulaha, that is rooted in ignorance. Kartrutva abhimana purasaraha, preceded by the ego of doership. Sukriyatma swarupa avasthana rupa, that is consisting in abiding as though the self were active. That is that the self is always untouched by any activity. It is not, it is active or inactive. Both activity and inactivity is not there in the case of the self. So, sakriyatma rupa avasthana rupasya. So that is a abidance of a self which is assumed to be active. Even that is not there in the case. Therefore, all these things, when you put together, it presupposes the standpoint that I am the doer, I act. Because the self is now associated with that ignorance. Where is this shown? The Purvapakshi or the opponent is asking. Where is this shown? So the answer is Iha Gita Shastre. Atma Swarupa Nirupane Pradesheshu. In this Gita, in various passages are there, explaining the nature of self. And what is it shown? Karma yogasya abhava pratibhadyate. The absence or the impossibility of karma yoga is taught. Why? Because the true knowledge, false knowledge, and their respective effects are mutually opposed. Samyak jnana mithya jnana tatkarya virodhat. This is the key logical principle. Right knowledge and ignorance are opposed. Their effects are also opposed in their, not only the actions, but their effects are also opposed. Therefore, the self-abidance in the non-doership and the action based on doership cannot coexist in the same knower. So to conclude, tasmat karma yoga na sambhavati. Therefore, karma yoga is not possible for the knower of the self. Then the opponent is asking, what kind of a knower? Nivrta mitya jnanasya, in one whom the ignorance has ceased, and in him the karma yoga doesn't happen. What kind of karma yoga? Viparyaya jnana mulaha, rooted in the ignorance, contrary or erroneous knowledge. Thus it is correct to say that the karma yoga is impossible for the knower of Atma. Keshu keshu punaha Atma Swarupa Nirupana Pradesheshu Atma Vidaha Karma Bhava Pradibhadyate iti atra aha avinashi tu tad. Iti pragritya ya enam veti hantaram veda vinashinam nityam. Ityadau tatra tatra Atma Vidaha Karma Bhava uchyate. The four-part format. Keshu keshu puna Atma Swarupa Nirupana Pradesheshu Atma Vidaha Karma Bhava Pradibhadyate. So the question is asked, in which all passages did this thing, and what kind of passages? Atma Swarupa Nirupana Pradesheshu. The passages explaining the nature of the self. The examples were given there. What is being asked about them? Atma Vidaha Karma Bhava Pradibhadyate. The absence of action for the knower of the self is what is being taught in those verses. So, avinashi tu tadviddhi. In the beginning of starting with the verse, in the second chapter, that avinashi, indestructible. You should know that you are indestructible is how it started from. That is the prakriti. Prakrityaha means taking as the strategic point in introducing the subject, which is from the chapter 2. Na enam veti hantara. In the second chapter again, 19th verse. One who he thinks he is to be the slayed or slayer, agency is denied. And in the 21st verse of the second chapter, Veda avinashinam nityam. He who knows the self as indestructible and eternal is given in the 21st verse. Tatra tatra uchyate. In various places, Gita Shastra has again and again, it has been said, Atmavidaha karma bhavaha. The absence of action for the knower of the self. So it is not an isolated claim by Shankaracharya or anything in the Gita Shastra itself, and it has been already taught that the nature of Atma is indestructible and it is enslayable, etc. Then the question is asked again, Nanu cha karma yoge api atma swarupa nirupana pradesheshu tatra tatra pratipadyate eva tadyataha tasmad yudhyasva bharata swadharmam api cha avekshya karmani eva adhikaraha te ityadau ataha cha katam atmavitaha karma yogaha asambhavaha syaditi. That is a natural question, because in the places where the question is being that karma yogaha api pratipadyate eva. The karma yoga is also being recommended by Krishna. Atma nirupana pradesheshu tatra tatra. Wherever the very passages explaining the self, he is also explaining how the karma yoga has to be done. You cannot claim that those actions deny action to the knower, because in those very same sections, the action is also described or injunctioned. Thus, examples are Tasmad Yudhyasva Bharata. Therefore, fight, O Arjuna. Swadharmam api cha avekshya. Even consider it is your own duty. Tasmad you are supposed to do the fight, or you are supposed to do the war. Karmani eva adhikaraha te. You are only entitled to the action. These are all explicit injunctions to action. They occur in the same very place where the general teaching of the knower is being taught. Therefore, the challenge is, how can the karma yoga be impossible for the knower of the self? In other words, if Gita itself, in the midst of teaching the nature of self, repeatedly tells Arjuna to act, how can you say that action is impossible in the knower of the self? This is a very sharp objection. Because the chapter 2 contains both Atmajnana teaching and karma injunctions. Then why not say that the same person, even after the self-knowledge, should continue karma yoga? So, atra uchyate. It's a long passage, so I'll go straight away to the statements by word. Here the reply is given by Shankaracharya, main governing reasons behind each of them. Samyak jnana mityajnana tatkarya virodhat. Because the right knowledge, false knowledge, and their respective effects are mutually opposed. This is the master principle behind the whole paragraph, which is a long one. Breaking into Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Pratakkaranatvad, because Gita has separated them in the beginning itself. Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yogina. The two paths separated, the path of knowledge for the knowers of the self and Karma Yoga for Nishta, for the non-knower of the self. So Gita 3.3 is read in clear bifurcation of who is having eligibility for what. Sankhya Yoga, Atma Vidaha, is the Jnana Yoga prescribed, and Anatmavit, those who are not knowing the self, engrossed in Karma Yoga. To them, Karma Yoga is prescribed. And what is Jnana Yoga here? Nishkriyatma Swarupa Avasthana Lakshana, characterized by abiding in the nature of the, within inverted comma, actionless self. It is not the self in the way in which we describe it, but the self is qualified as an actionless self, because self is never doing any action. It's a sakshi. It's a witness. So therefore, we should understand that the nature of the self has to be seen as an actionless self. Therefore, the Gita itself is already distinguishing the two different paths for the two different adhikaris. Kritakrityattvena atmavidaha prayojana anyatara abhavat. Because the knower of the self, being one who has accomplished what has to be accomplished, has no further purpose to be served. The jnani, kritakritya, the one who has done what is to be done. Because for one who is abiding in the actionless self, he is in a state of being kritakritya, means has done what is to be done. There is no doership anymore in him. So no further sadhana remains in such a person. Tasya karyam na vidyate kartavya anantara abhava vachanat. And because the scripture says, for him there is no duty, thus declaring the absence of any further obligation. This is direct textual support that jnani has no remaining kartavya. Na karmanam anarambad naishkarmyam purushosnude. Sanyastu mahabaho dukkhamaptum ayogataha. Karma yogasya vidhanat. And because karma yoga is enjoined as an auxiliary to self-knowledge, this is a major point which Shankaracharya is taking up. Karma yoga is not the final state. It is the Atmajnanas Angatvena. It is a limb of Atmajnana, or an auxiliary, or a aid for self-knowledge. So the Karma Yoga belongs to the preparatory stage at the stage of when the person is Atjnani, where he has not understood himself as the actionless self. So it becomes a preparatory stage, not to the already accomplished knower who abides in the actionless self. Yogarudasya tasya eva shamakaranam uchyate. Utpanna samyak darshanasya karma yoga abhava vachanat. And because for the one in whom right knowledge has risen, the absence of karma yoga is stated. Gita 6.3. For the beginner, karma means what is the karma means. And for the one who is established, sama, quietude, not karma. So karma and sama are differentiated. Chariram karma kevalam. Charira sthiti karana stira kristya karmanaha nivaranat. And because all actions beyond and what is necessary for mere bodily maintenance, Shankara points out that for the knower, even if something continues, it is only Sharira Sthiti Karanat. As a prarabdha, the Sharira continues. There is no obligation-based ritual or worldly striving means. Naiva kinchit karomi iti yukto manyate tattvavit. Karomi iti pratyaya akartavyatva vyapadeshat. Because even with the respect to the seeing, hearing, etc., actions prompted by merely the bodily existence, the knower is instructed not to entertain the notion, I am the doer. This is an important point, extremely important point. When the body appears to act like seeing, hearing, walking, sleeping, speaking, etc., the knower of the self, who is abiding in the actionless self, he should not think that I am doing. Thus Shankaracharya is attacking the very root of Karma Yoga. Kartrutva pratyaya. The cognition that I am the doer. That is what is being denied. And is always denied. Samahita chetaha tas taya tasada. Because his mind is always collected in the actionless self. This is the conclusion of the reasoning. Atmatva tattvavitaha karma yoga swapneopi na sambhavidam shakyate. For the knower of the self, karma yoga cannot be conceived even in his dream. Because karma yoga is samyak darshana viruddha. Is opposed to the right knowledge. And it can happen only due to ignorance. Mithya jnana hetukaha. This is one of the strongest statements of Shankaracharya into the knower of Brahman. For the true knower, Karma Yoga is not merely unnecessary, but it is impossible and incompatible and inaccessible in all ways, in the all means, to the knower of Brahman. Therefore, it is in principle incompatible. Therefore, anatmatva kartrutvayoho eva sannyasa karma yogaha nishreyaskaratva vachanam. The statement that both renunciation and karma yoga lead to the liberation must refer only to the non-doer. This is the direct interpretation of the verse number second reply to the Arjuna's question, which comes in the 5th chapter. When Krishna says, both are conducive to liberation, that this is not about accomplished jnani, but about an ajnani in whom both options are still open. Of the two, Karma Yoga is superior. Krishna is answering to Arjuna's question. Tayorekam nischayam bruhi. Explain to me one which is the most well or what is best suited, Nishreyasga. So Krishna answers that Tayoho, among the two, Karma Yoga is superior. Why is Karma Yoga called superior? Because sannyasa being referred to, there is not the absolute renunciation for the jnani, rather different from the previously mentioned total renunciation belonging to the self-knower. Purvoktatva sarva karma sannyasa vilakshanat satya eva kartrutva vijnane. The cognition of doership is still being present unless he is a the self-knower, abiding in the self. And further, karma eka visheshayat, concerning only a part of action, yama niyamadi sahidatvena cha duranushteyad sukaratveva cha na sukaratvena cha. Difficult to practice due to disciplines like yama, niyama, etc. Karma yoga is easier compared to the yoga. Thus the sense is, for an ignorant aspirant, a certain kind of renunciation is harder, which is in the form of yama, niyama, asana, yara, pratyahara, etc. Therefore, the better way is to do the karma yoga, which is easier, and therefore karma yoga vishishyate is preferred or superior. Thus, even by analyzing the meaning of Lord's reply, Krishna's reply, the previously stated intention of the questioner is firmly established, and it is sthitam. Shankaracharya finally closing the opponent's statement. Hence, the statement both the renunciation and karma yoga are conducive to liberation must refer only to the non-knower of the self. And likewise, the declaration that karma yoga is superior to renunciation must also refer to the renunciation belonging to such a person, a renunciation different from the total renunciation of all actions belong to the knower of self. One which still proposes a sense of doership concerns only some actions and is difficult to practice due to disciplines such as yama, niyama, etc. Whereas karma yoga is easier. Thus, even from the analysis of the meaning of Krishna's reply, the previously stated intention of the questioner is decisively established. This is the conclusion. So, Jnani cannot truly be a karma yogin. Karma yoga belongs to the Jnani or the mumukshu. Of the two, both are good, but karma yoga is better. Is the second verse. Refers to the two options available to the non-knower, one who doesn't abide in the actionless self. It does not mean for a jnani karma yoga is better than renunciation, but one who is abiding in the selfless, actionless self. It is renunciation is better than the karma yoga. Jayasi chet karmanah te ityatra jnana karmanayoho saha asambhave yachreya etayo tan bruhi ityevam prishta arjunaha Bhagavan Sankhyanam Sannyasinam Jnana Yogena Nishta Punaha Karma Yogena Yoginam Nishta Prokta Iti Nirnayam Chakaraha Nacha Sannyasana Deva Kevala Siddhim Samadhi Gacchati Iti Vachanat Jnana Sahitasya Siddhi Sadhanatva Ishtam Karma Yogahasya Cha Vidhanad Jnana Rehitasya Sanyasaha Shreyan Kim vai Karma Yogam Shreyan Iti Etayo Visheshanam Vishesha Babhuchaya. So the question is, in the statement of if knowledge is superior to action, since knowledge and action cannot coexist, Arjuna having asked, tell me which one is the two of the one is better for me. The Krishna made the determination that self-steadfastness, the steadfastness through the self-knowledge, belongs to the Sankhya, and steadfastness through Karma Yoga belongs to the yogis, those who are engaged in action. From the statement, nor does one attain perfection merely by renunciation and action alone. nacha sannyasanaadeva kevalat siddhim samadhi gacchati. Iti Bhagavad Vacanat. Jnana sahitasya siddhi sadhanatvam ishtam karma yogasya cha vidhanat. It is accepted that karma yoga, when accompanied by knowledge, is a means to perfection because it is enjoined. Jnana rahitasya sannyasa shreyan kimva karma yoga shreyan. Thus, if the question is arising, if the renunciation without knowledge is superior or karma yoga is superior, iti etayo visheshana bubutya. To answer this question with the desire to know the distinction between the two, Arjuna Uvacha, question asked, Sannyasam karmana yakashna punar yogam cha shamsasi yesha thaya tayorekam tanme bruhi sunistitam. This is that where the first verse starts. So we will continue the first verse on Wednesday. So the introduction to the doubt which Arjuna had, whether karma yoga is superior or karma sannyasa is superior, what is the reason, to whom is sannyasa applicable, to whom is karma yoga applicable, these things were discussed in detail by Shankaracharya as his introduction to the fifth chapter. So the fifth chapter, the first verse is the doubt raised by Arjuna, which is now explained by Shankaracharya. The breakup and the each word meaning, we will see it in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. Dhanyawad.
Thank you very much, Bindoji. I've opened the chat and hand raising. If there are any follow-ups or clarifications. So just a reminder for those who joined. So this is the beginning of chapter 5, room number 1. And Bindoji has just begun on that. And so our schedule is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 a.m. IST. If you want to join on Wednesday.
Okay, we'll meet on Wednesday then.
Okay, Bindoji. I had one small question just to clarify, because when in the chapter 4 end you talked about the jnana sin, right?
Right.
So now you're beginning to clarify the adhikari, right? The one who has achieved that and the one who is attempting to achieve that, right? So what will unfold is what kind of actions one will choose, isn't it? Is that what is going to unfold?
Yes. See, the whole direction for the fifth chapter will decide on to the proper understanding of the third and fourth chapters summary, in the sense that there both karma was given by Krishna, then yajna was given, karma yoga as a karma yajna, as a brahma yajna was explained. And then he also said about this jnana sannyasa in the end of the fourth chapter. So natural for us to know, where do I belong? If I have to now take Krishna's advice and proceed, where should I place myself? I have been told that I am no Atma. I know about Atma has been described in the second chapter as Najayate Mriyate Vaj Kadachit, Nahanyate Hanyamane Sharire, all those Najo Nitya Shashvatoyam Puranaha. The nature of Atma was explained. and Sthita Prajna also was explained. So I have an idea about Atma. But at the same time, I am not able to see myself as that actionless Atma as my true nature. I am still seeing myself as a person who is seeing, hearing, touching, eating, breathing, procreating, all those physical activities and identification to the body as I am the body. We are not able to de-identify ourselves from the idea that I am the knower of the body to the actionless, the witness Atman. Therefore, which category do I belong to? And what should be my path? Or what are the things I should do? Or how do I achieve that state if I am not that? All these things will become a doubt in our mind that need to be clarified. Krishna takes us stage by stage from the ignorant person's point of view. Therefore, he says that, therefore, karma yoga is superior to karma sannyasa if we are not able to de-identify ourselves as the embodied individual. We are not even the embodied individual. We are the actionless self, non-doer, akarta. If you are not able to identify that and remain in that state of akartrutva, kritakrityata, which has been mentioned in the verse earlier, if that has not been achieved by us, then karma yoga is better to us. And how do we achieve that state of actionless self? Through the path of karma yoga is very important, because it is not contradictory or opposed to karma sannyasa or the sannyasa, which is the ultimate mean, ultimate end. But it is a preparatory stage for achieving that state. So how do I prepare myself? How do I go through the preparatory steps of karma sannyasa? And how do I end up as a kritakritya or a atmajnani? We need that guidance from Krishna. That is why Krishna will take us through that.
Yes, thank you very much, Binduji. But that gives us some directionality, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Revati is on stage.
Thank you, Prakash. Namaste, Revati.
Pranam Binduji. Pranam Prakashji. Very nice to hear you again, Binduji. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, in where you last Binduji, here is the clear adhikaratva is clearly differentiated. When I conclude myself, where I stand, it is
yes.
It is today's class explained very well, Bindaji. Because if the mumukshu is he is wishing to renunciate himself or his karma, or he want to renunciate the karmas of his duty, then this question will arise himself. That is very clearly explained. But for Jnani,
Yes.
There is no karma yoga too. So this
Absolutely
is the adhikara. Yes, the adhikara beda is today explained very well. Is it? I'm clear, Bindaji?
Yeah, you are clear. Absolutely clear.
Yes, Bindaji. Thank you. Thank you again, Bindaji.
Yes. See, that ultimate stage will be where our identification, even though we remain embodied in this body, the activities of the body is not seen as my activity. The activities of the body, whatever it is, whether you are a family person, you are a sannyasi, you are a raja, or a mendicant in the street, doesn't matter. The person has understood that the truth of who am I, is nothing to do with what is the body being performed. It is not that my body anymore as me as the body, which is performing as a householder or a king or a, mendicant. Bodies are there acting themselves. One body is acting as a householder, the other body is acting as a king, the other body is acting as a child, the other acting as a beggar, or whatever may be that. These are all appearances of the bodies in Brahman. I am that pure awareness, Satchidananda Brahman, in which all these appearances are taking place as if it is, done by me, was my knowledge due to my ignorance. When the knowledge arises, the me is separated out. The me is no more the me of the body me, but the me as the knower of everything, and the identification of the self. The whole problem for all of us, even though we are able to identify ourselves as the self from the knowledge of the definition given by the self in the scriptures, we know we are Sakshi, I am observer. But when we are also knowing that I am the observer and everything, that last knot of that mamatvam, that cannot be broken until the knowledge becomes firm in us. The mamatvam or the mindness, mine, it belonging to me. This body belongs to me cannot be cut or removed unless and until the final pole vault to the established Atman takes place. Even when we are looking at our body and our actions, we may be able to look at it from a Sakshi point of view. As a witness, I am able to see all those things. But even when I am doing it as a witness, as a Sakshi, the ego, not that egoism or the ahankara, but the ego as I, the self, who is the witness. There also this witness becomes the I. Even when the witnessing is happening place, we are holding on to the I, at I am the witness of it. The I aspect is not getting knocked off or destroyed. The truth jnani, the knower, is not even having the witness attitude. He is not even witnessing anything. He is, for him, the karma, the eating, sleeping, etc. of the body and everything is not even seen as a witnessing. He sees that as Brahma Karma Samadhi, which is mentioned in that 424th chapter verse. The oblation, the matter is material Brahman, the fire is Brahman, the offerer is Brahman, the offering is Brahman. There is nothing other than Brahman. That is the final state of that abidance in the actionless Brahman. He sees everything in himself. Yatra nanyat pashyati anyat shrunoti anyat vijanati. That becomes the reality of his own existence. He existing in that Atma Tattvam doesn't have even the Sakshitva. Tebhyo Vilakshana. He had become Vilakshana from that also. Chinmatroham. Pure the awareness. Sadashivam. Always tranquil and pure knowledge is my Swarupa. I am that. Not the Sakshi, not the doer, not the ignorant. None of them. When that is not achieved by us, the method of karma yoga, karma sannyasa, all these practices which Krishna has told to Arjuna and what he is going to explain further in the 5th chapter will become the path for practicing for our own purpose. That becomes the yoga for us. Yoga means path through which we can achieve that. That is the purpose of the 5th chapter, which was introduced in a very lengthy message by Shankaracharya. Thank you, Revati.
Thank you, Binduji. Beautiful, Binduji. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, Binduji, shall we close the room?
Yep. Yes, please.
So we'll meet again on Wednesday, 6:30 a.m. IST for class number 2. If you want to listen to the replay, it's available on Clubhouse. The earlier replays are available on other channels that I've shared in the chat. And as always, thank you, Binduji. So we'll close the room. Over to you.
Thank you, Prakash. Thank you, Revati. Thank you, all of you who have been listening. I will be uploading this to YouTube and Spotify today itself within another maybe 1 or 2 hours. And those who are not being able to attend because of the change of time, they can listen to the recording from the YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast and catch up. Hope they will be able to, more people can attend in the morning class because the change of time I can understand. To rescheduling your day-to-day work will be slightly different. So see you more tomorrow. On Wednesday's class. And until then, Hari Om. Good night. Good day.
Binduji.
Good day. Hari Om.